Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lynn. Coming up in the next hour, India hands over the G20 presidency to Brazil, and the President Lula da Silva of Brazil congratulates India for effective leadership. The world showers praise on India's G20 leadership, reaching the Delhi Declaration with a balance struck on Ukraine. The Morocco earthquake death toll crosses 2,000, with survivors sleeping out in the open in the cold. Arch rivals India and Pakistan face off in cricket in Colombo. Pakistan wins the toss and chooses to bowl first. From India to Brazil, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has handed over to Lula da Silva, the next holder of the G20 presidency. The Brazilian leader has praised Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership during this year's G20 summit. President Lula da Silva says that preparatory ministerial meetings will be hosted in several cities in all 5 regions of Brazil. All G20 member nations are expected to attend the Rio de Janeiro summit in November of 2024.
मैं G20 समिट के समापन की घोषणा करता हूं। वन अर्थ, वन फैमिली, वन फ्यूचर का रोड मैप सुखद हो। स्वस्ति अस्तु विश्वस्य, यानी संपूर्ण विश्व में आशा और शांति का संचार हो। 140 करोड़ भारतीयों की इसी मंगल कामना के साथ आप सभी का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
While addressing the closing session of the G20 summit, the Brazilian President Lula Inácio Lula da Silva congratulated the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi for efficiently leading the G20 bloc.
I would like to congratulate Prime Minister Narendra Modi for the efficient leading of the Indian presidency of the G20 and for the excellent work done in preparing this summit, and also with all the care that he and they gave us in these days that we spent with you. I thank India for its efforts to give voice, for giving voice to the topics of interest to emerging economies. So I would also like to give my salute to our friend, the representative of the African Union, who is a member of G20.
After handing over the presidency, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that India has the responsibility of the G20 presidency till November of 2023.
Your Highnesses, Excellencies, जैसा आप सब जानते हैं, भारत के पास नवंबर तक G20 प्रेसिडेंसी की भी जिम्मेदारी है। अभी 2.5 महीने बाकी हैं। इन 2 दिनों में आप सभी ने अनेक बातें यहाँ रखी हैं, सुझाव दिए हैं, बहुत सारे प्रस्ताव रखे हैं। हमारी ये जिम्मेदारी है कि जो सुझाव आए हैं उनको भी एक बार फिर देखा जाए कि उनकी प्रगति में गति कैसे लाई जा सकती है। मेरा प्रस्ताव है कि हम नवंबर के अंत में G20 का एक वर्चुअल सेशन और रखें। उस सेशन में हम इस समिट के दौरान तय विषयों की समीक्षा कर सकते हैं। इन सब की डिटेल्स हमारी टीम आप सभी के साथ शेयर करेगी। मैं उम्मीद करता हूं कि आप सब इससे जुड़ेंगे। योर हाइनेसेस, एक्सेलेंसीज, इसी के साथ मैं G20 समिट के समापन की घोषणा करता हूं। वन अर्थ, वन फैमिली, वन फ्यूचर का रोड मैप सुखद हो। स्वस्ति अस्तु विश्वस्य, यानी संपूर्ण विश्व में आशा और शांति का संचार हो। 140 करोड़ भारतीयों की इसी मंगल कामना के साथ आप सभी का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
The chief coordinator of India's G20 presidency, Harshvardhan Shringla, has spoken about the New Delhi declaration adopted at the G20 summit, and he stressed that reaching a consensus on the first day of the presidency is tremendously positive.
We have certainly, I think, in many senses ensured that the Prime Minister's vision of an ambitious, outcome-oriented, inclusive presidency would be held, I think has been seen in every aspect of the way that we've conducted our presidency right up to the end. And in many senses, I think, the fact that we have an outcome document that reflects consensus among all of our G20 partners, and those partners are from, as you know, from the developed world and from the emerging economies, I think is an extraordinary achievement, but also answers your question that yes, we have achieved that objective, but more important, we've achieved the objectives of the Global South. We've achieved the objectives of articulating the voice of the Global South in the G20 and addressing their core concerns. And we see the outcome documents, this is what it is. We have addressed the requirements and concerns of the Global South.
And as the summit concludes, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is holding bilateral meetings with some of the visiting leaders, and he held a very productive lunch meeting with the French President Emmanuel Macron. The two leaders discussed a series of topics, and they look forward to ensuring the India-France relationship scales new heights of progress. It's been a strong and perhaps a strategic friendship between India and France for years, and the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi was the first leader that President Macron met after his re-election last year. The relationship has now reached a new level of cooperation, with France providing several defense and engineering equipments to India.
On its day of national celebration in July, a guest of honor for France. Paris rolling out the red carpet for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. A visit that marked a new milestone in relations between the two countries.
मैं अपने मित्र प्रेसिडेंट मैक्रो के साथ नेशनल डे परेड का हिस्सा बनूंगा। ये आत्मीयता सिर्फ दो देशों के नेताओं के बीच नहीं है, बल्कि ये भारत फ्रांस की अटूट दोस्ती का प्रतिबिंब है, रिफ्लेक्शन है।
India's Prime Minister and the French President Emmanuel Macron keen to forge closer ties between their nations. And to mark the 25th anniversary of their nation's strategic partnership, the two leaders shared selfies on social media, a sign of the warmth between the two leaders, reinforced when Prime Minister Modi was awarded France's highest honor. It's been a strong and perhaps strategic friendship between these two for years. The Prime Minister was the first leader President Macron met after his re-election last year. Now, with India's presidency of the G20, the Prime Minister will host the man he calls his friend. And it's a friendship that has improved the military and economic ties between the two countries. For decades, India has largely relied on Russian defense equipment. It's now shifting to buy more French hardware, like the contract to buy Rafale warplanes for the Indian Air Force, as well as the French Scorpion submarines. It's a win-win It's a boost for the French defense industry, and it meets India's defense needs. And now, there's also a joint venture, India and France agreeing to make warplane engines together. That's a breakthrough for India's defense industry as well. India and France have been close allies in trade, defense, and in the Pacific, but the friendship between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and French President Emmanuel Macron has only given a strong impetus to the growing relations between these two countries, and this bond is expected to grow only stronger in the coming years. In New Delhi, Akshit Dongre, DD India.
Now, earlier this morning, the G20 leaders and international delegates visited a memorial site of India's father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi. The group led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi paid tribute at this complex, which is known as Rajghat. The world leaders laid wreaths in honor of the memory of Mahatma Gandhi at his final resting place. A black marble platform marks the spot of Gandhiji's last rites. Prime Minister Modi also greeted the G20 leaders individually at the site. As each one arrived, they received a shawl from the Indian leader. There were also live performances of devotional songs dedicated to the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, which were played at the venue. Now, at the summit, the President of Indonesia, Joko Widodo, and the President of Brazil, Lula da Silva, gave Prime Minister Narendra Modi a tree sapling each for planting ceremony. It was to symbolize the third G20 session called One Future.
Thank you. Kindly.
And the UK Prime Minister of Indian origin, Rishi Sunak, visited the Akshardham temple in the national capital of New Delhi. Prime Minister Sunak, along with his wife Akshata Murthy, they offered prayers at the site. This is Sunak's first official visit to India as the UK Prime Minister. He met with the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Saturday on the sidelines of the ongoing G20 summit. And Vishal Barristow now joins us live from New Delhi. He's at the Bharat Mandapam. And Tapas Bhattacharya is at the Crafts Bazaar, also at the Bharat Mandapam. Thank you very much, both of you, for being with us. Vishal, what's the buzz, around? Tell us a little bit about how people are reacting to the G20 summit.
Well, a very good evening to you, Mark. Yes, the buzz is of a lot of appreciation for India because it was not an easy task to come up with a declaration to reach on a consensus. But the good news came yesterday when Prime Minister, he stopped the proceedings for a while and said that I have good news to share with you. We have reached a consensus. Yes, we have moved a long way from Bali to Delhi, and now it is not that the world is divided on the issue of Ukraine-Russia war. Now we are more focused on inclusive development and how to sort out things. That is the declaration from here, and how to sort out things diplomatically. Russia has responded very positively on that, because till now in Bali it was looking as if Russia has been cornered because of its aggression against Ukraine. But thanks to the countries who belong to the non-aligned movement like South Africa, India, Indonesia, and Japan also played a key role in reaching this consensus. So the buzz is of promise, the buzz is of excitement, the buzz is for the future, and we have lived up to our expectation when we say, and our motto, one earth, one family, one future. And now Rio is going to host the event, and I've spoken to a journalist from Brazil, and she was all very excited, and she said that we are very happy to take on the responsibility. Now India has done a tremendous job, and now it is up to Brazil. And as you heard the Prime Minister, he said that by November, India still has 2.5 months to go. So we can have a virtual meeting to see how much progress has been made. So November is the time when we should be eyeing this virtual meeting, because the progress is very much important. And it would also make every member realize that we have achieved so far and we have to achieve so much. So it is not only on paper, but we have to walk the talk. Mark?
Yes, Tapas, so you're at the Crafts Bazaar. Tell us a little bit about, the layout of the Crafts Bazaar, what purpose it has served over the last 2 days, and how busy it has been.
Well, Mark, let me just tell you that, Vishal was bang on there when he used the word buzz. There is absolutely buzzing. The Craft Bazaar in Bharat Mandapam is buzzing with activity. The delegates are coming here. We, in fact, just saw a while back the U.S. ambassador coming here, and, a lot of people also coming in and doing shopping. The reason why it's buzzing is that this particular place has the stalls of almost every state. In fact, you name any state and it will have its own stall. And apart from that, there's a lot of new handicrafts, the work that artisans have provided, and it's really of great quality, and it kind of brings forward India's soft power status. The way India is, we talk about unity in diversity. This is exactly this is a classic example of a unity in diversity. You have, let's just say, some stuff from West Bengal, some crafts from Odisha, then from Uttar Pradesh. So one district, one product that Prime Minister Narendra Modi have spoken about is actually, can be seen here, and it's a classic example of how, all these artisans have come under one roof, and these delegates are absolutely delighted, thrilled to be coming here and be part of this amazing journey, and this amazing journey that is Bharat that we are talking about. The hinterland of Bharat is here, and giving a glimpse of the delegates what the country is all about. So there is definitely a buzz. And Mark, another thing I want to bring forth today. Yesterday, Prime Minister Modi spoke about the fact that there is a trust deficit, and also the fact that the new world order is moving, and there are conflicts, but it has to be resolved. And today in the morning, all the world leaders went to Rajghat, where Mahatma Gandhi, there is and there is a resonance there. There is a reasoning behind, that particular thought process, because if the world has to move towards a more peaceful, path, then Mahatma Gandhi's values, his ideas need to be incorporated, and this G20 is a way to show the world that this is how it can be done, and that's the key factor here. The Prime Minister did spoke about today also, that the new world order has to be there. The multilateralism has to be there in banks and banking system, and all these things he mentioned, and those are the very crucial points that we have to take into consideration. The new world order is going. There is the old world order is going. The new world order is coming, and India, Bharat is leading that. And under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership, India is going to be a leader path. It will show the world the right path.
We are also joined by Dr. Swasti Rao, Associate Fellow at the Manohar Parrikar Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis. Thank you very much, Dr. Rao, for being with us. So India set about with an ambitious agenda and achieved it before time. How would you, look at that in terms of, let's say, the processes that took place before the summit? There were so many of them, over 60 different venues. The document also seemed to reflect quite a few of the summaries that were built up on those 200 meetings.
Oh, yes, absolutely, Mark. And a very good evening to you and everybody else. And congratulations to all of us, because we have come out with such flying colors. And this has been a truly intersectional global moment for India. Now, in terms of the culmination, of course, the culmination that we saw yesterday in terms of the declaration, the much touted, famous declaration by now, which is being considered a work of stellar diplomacy from India's side. Now, that culmination, of course, has not happened overnight. Of course, it is a result of all the 200 plus meetings that India held under its G20 presidency at 60 plus venues in different cities, and with a very 360-degree approach, in my opinion. Now, I think there are certain things that should be mentioned, which is that for sure, the core agenda for the G20 is to improve the global financial and economic architecture, because there's a certain context to G20 that lends it its significance. It's not just any other multilateral outing. It's not just any other multilateral grouping, but it is a multilateral grouping which is dedicated to a specific cause, which is to how to have a better financial architecture so that we can better tackle the global crises, because the nature of the global crisis and the banking crisis is such that it starts to snowball and starts to affect everybody else. Now, that is the first thing that should be kept in mind. And I think in that regard, Mark, if you go back and if you see that the three core meetings that the G20 is supposed to have. One is the finance ministers meeting, the other is the foreign ministers meeting, and then the third is this APEX leaders meeting. Among all the other 200 meetings that we have had, these three are perhaps the most important ones. And if you look at the finance minister meeting and the details that were sort of finalized there, I personally feel that it was really successful, even though back then it had not really come out with a joint statement, because there was no consensus on Ukraine. Even in the foreign ministers meeting, there was no consensus. Anyway, all that is now old news, because we finally have a consensus. But going back to the finance tracks, I think there is a lot of good work that India has added when it comes to debt restructuring. There is a lot of good work that India has added when it comes to, dividing the gap between the global north and the south, not just in terms of getting the African Union in, Mark, but also in terms of trying to make the special drawing rights at the IMF more equitable. Okay. Similarly, fighting for, getting the G7 to deliver on its promise of $100 billion for the climate financing, etc. Now, obviously, now that Brazil has taken over, we would probably see how Brazil takes on from here, because let's understand that the G20 agenda, which is the core finance tracks and the engagement group's agenda, this is set among the three of the Troika, which is the outgoing president, the serving president, and the incoming president. So India so far was the part of the Troika of Indonesia, India, and Brazil. From now, India is going to be part of the Troika called India, Brazil, and South Africa. And there will be this continuity, and everybody will sort of make sure how the follow-up is done. As far as India is concerned, I think we have really delivered well on all these things that I mentioned. And of course, the big ticket takeaways have been, like I said, getting the African Union in, having this wonderful landmark connectivity project between the EU, US, Middle East, and India, getting the biofuel alliance with Brazil and the US. So those are definitely the big ticket announcements out there.
Sure. Let's turn once again to Vishal Barrister, who's at the G20 summit at the Bharat Mandapam. Vishal, there are a number of pull-aside bilateral meetings that the Prime Minister is scheduled to have. One has already taken place at lunch over with the French President Emmanuel Macron. Can you fill us in with the details about the others?
Well, Mark, we have to wait for some more time, because, yes, the bilaterals are lined up with the other countries as well. Turkey and Italy are there. But to add on to what our expert was saying, that the finance ministers meeting, now when we talk about G20, it consists of 80% of the world GDP, and so it is also the responsibility of G20 nations to cut down the greenhouse effect, and because climate change is affecting the world and we cannot ignore it. And the target set by G20 is by 2050 we should have zero emission. Now that is a huge target, but definitely not impossible. So the onus lies on developed countries, West first of all, and also the developing countries who are now trying very hard to come up to that status, and India is leading the way for the global south. So India has always walked the talk as far as Paris Convention is concerned, and we are looking forward to a world which is, a kind of place where we can all say that this is the world that belongs to each and every one of us. Now, G20 has now grown up to a huge, huge group. It has members from G7, it has members from ASEAN, and now we have the African continent, 55 countries also joining. So 19 countries plus EU plus 55 countries from Africa. G20 is definitely a group to reckon with, and India now being the part of the Troika, Indonesia, yes, India, and now Brazil. It is going to be an important position for India.
Tapas, so people are taking a little bit of India away with them, and they'll be taking souvenirs, I'm sure, from the crafts bazaar, and a lot of those souvenirs would be handicrafts. And you talked a little bit earlier about Mahatma Gandhi, and of course, Khadi is one of the handicrafts that we're all proud of. But to a large extent, I mean, tell us a little bit about the products and what demand that they've had. And how they're going to be transported to the various countries of interest.
Could you repeat the last line?
I was asking you whether there are special people maybe have been so interested that they may acquire more than what space they have in their suitcases. How would they be transported?
I'm not sure about that. Let's not get into the nitty-gritty of how they want to export or they want to take away the souvenir from here. But definitely there's the buzz, and as I mentioned earlier also, and taking a cue from what you were discussing with Vishal, and with your guest also, there are a couple of very important takeaways that can be seen. This particular G20 can be, when we spoke to the US ambassador, he mentioned the fact that this particular G20 is probably a path-breaking in many ways, and he mentioned the fact that probably in more than a decade we have never seen a G20 where on the first day they have agreed on a declaration. The declaration has a lot of things. Vishal was mentioning the fact that by 2050 the net zero they want to get into the group, but the NDC targets it's also mentioned the fact that the NDC target have to be met by the G20 group countries, and it's not going to be easy. It's going to be very difficult. The developed countries are on it, already working on that. India is also working on that. Prime Minister Narendra Modi already in its COP in Glasgow has announced that by 2070 India would be net neutral, and by 2050 they would like to have India's energy renewable production almost half. So it will be done through renewable energy. So all these things India is working on, and by 2030 in fact, so India is moving on its target, and it is expected that it will be able to it in fact also had a mission life. It included in the declaration the mission life point that the Prime Minister has been talking about, providing environment. Providing sustainable living, sustainable development as a major plank in development.
Get the last
so
word
those
in
are
from
very
Dr.
important.
Swasti Rao. Yes, Dr. Rao, when we look at the continuation in terms of policy direction, how would you look at what President Lula said about the priorities that Brazil would be looking at? He spoke about social inclusion, fighting hunger, energy transition, sustainable development, climate change, and all that.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think there are no surprises there, Mark, because the thing is that these are in many ways what our Prime Minister had said when we had took over when we had taken over the baton from Indonesia last year, and now that Brazil has taken over the responsibility. You see that Prime Minister, the president out there is also somewhere echoing the larger agenda. I think the first thing to my mind is that definitely it comes as an evidence of the continuity that I was earlier telling you about, and that is the beauty of the Troika system, so that there are no sudden, changes in the agenda of the G20. Number one. Number two, I think we already saw how Brazil
Yes.
is committed to its climate, so to say, goals and all the transition. Because see, we also entered into in this wonderful biofuel alliance with the US and Brazil, and Brazil is a major producer of maize, and also US, and that's where we intend to get our ethanol from, and we intend to notch up the mix of ethanol into petrol by 20% by 2025. So we
Yes.
already are seeing that Brazil is not just saying it through the G20, but is also committed to it in its own individual capacity. So I would expect a lot of development to be made under Brazil's, and Brazil is again important because Brazil is a part of the BRICS as well. So I think there's a lot of overlap. We already have a strategic partnership with Brazil. So I think even bilaterally or multilaterally, I think again, Brazil is a part of the global South. So
Okay.
good news for the global South as well. So I think all of these things are pretty in sync with the other, and
Sure.
I would expect a continuity, to
Yes,
sustain. Yeah.
that's all the time we have for. Thanks very much, Dr. Swasti Rao, Vishal Barristow, and Tapas Bhattacharya for enlightening us on the G20 summit. Our next story, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, that is, also had a very fruitful meeting with the President of Comoros, President Azali Assoumani. That happened a short while ago, and President Assoumani, in fact, is the current president of the African Union. And he once again extended his congratulations for the African Union joining the G20 family. Comoros is vital to India's Saga vision as well. The deliberations included ways to enhance cooperation in areas like shipping, trade, and more. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also met his Canadian counterpart, Justin Trudeau, on the sidelines of the G20 summit, and they discussed the full range of India-Canada ties across different sectors. The U.S. ambassador to India, Eric Garcetti, spoke exclusively to DD India. The U.S. envoy talked about the strengthened relations between the two countries. He said that multilateralism is evolving and that the U.S. considers India to be a great ally.
We have with us U.S. Ambassador to India, Eric Garcetti. Thank you for speaking to us. The relationship between India and the United States has never been better than before. Quite a lot of meetings in the last 1 year, more bilaterals than we've actually seen. Prime Minister Modi was in America. We've seen a lot of series of meetings happening between the two. How do you think the relationship is moving forward, this rapprochement? How would you look at it?
I think every time I think it's reached the highest point it can reach, it goes even higher. This is a relationship based on two leaders who genuinely love being with each other, but also two governments that increasingly love working together, from climate to women's empowerment, from security and military to issues of financial reforms. We proved by coming here not only the warmth towards India, but we saw India's leadership. And I think this relationship is about each of us following each other, building on each other's strengths, and not just bringing that to our countries, but to the world.
Right, and the American media talks about India being the bulwark against China. Of course, there's an elaborate discussion and analysis waiting on that. But how do you view that, given the kind of developments we've seen? We've had the ICET earlier last year. We also had the Quad meeting. We had the I2U2. How are we moving forward in all these initiatives, especially with the heightened activity in the Indo-Pacific? Has the interest increased a lot over the years, according to you?
No question. We love the Indo-Pacific as a region. I'm from Los Angeles, so I'm on the eastern edge of the Indo-Pacific, and here we are close to the western edge of it. But we're united by values, values that the seas should be free for all people, that countries should play by the rules, they should respect borders and sovereignty, and that we should build an economy that works for everyone. India inspires me when I see how the economy is bringing those up from the bottom, and we certainly have a president of the United States who wants to bring the bottom up and the middle out. When we have a strong middle class in both countries, it shows that prosperity isn't just for the few. And with other countries, we might have points of interest. We both want peaceful relations with China, where we all play by the same rules. But our relationship doesn't depend on any third country. It's between India and the United States. It's real, it's warm, it's genuine, and it's growing.
Okay, but both countries do see multilateralism in crisis. Would you agree?
I think multilateralism is actually evolving, and I think we see it in a good way. In the United States, we engage in multilateralism. Sometimes others say, oh, West versus the rest. This was proof at G20. The United States looks at the entire world and cares about the entire world, whether it's advocating for India's independence, decades ago, or now looking at the ways that we can diversify our supply chains, work together on health solutions, climate solutions. This is based in friendship and real, genuine goodwill. But I think it's also incredibly strategic because we know it's not just America plus India, it's America times India when we get together.
Thank you, Ambassador, for speaking to us and taking our time. That was a U.S. Ambassador to India telling us about the relationship between the two countries and how it has evolved over the years. And we're going to see more initiatives between the two in the coming future. This is Jessica Taneja for DD India.
Coverage of the G20 in 4K format has been quite a success. And DD India has used this opportunity as a launchpad. DD India's Vishal Barristow spoke to the Information and Broadcasting Secretary of India, Apurva Chandra, who is the highest official in the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting.
It has been a successful ending of G20 Delhi, and I have with me the Secretary of Information and Broadcasting. Let's talk to him and find out, because the world has appreciated this event, and I have also spoken to some of the foreign journalists and they are very appreciative about it. Sir, the international media has responded very positively. So as the Secretary of the department, how do you feel?
The success of the G20 summit, of course, has been in the document which has been signed and concluded under the guidance of, under the leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister, and that has been agreed to by all the nations who are participating here. But apart from that, the facilities here are world class. I had said this 3-4 days before the summit that this will set the gold standard, and I am sure that all the reporters over here, they will vouch for that this media center is the best, the kind of media center which they would not get anywhere else in the world.
Sir, it was quite an achievement for Doordarshan also. From HD we moved to 4K. So how would you react to that?
It is a landmark achievement for Doordarshan to move from HD to 4K. I think it is a moment like Asiad, where we moved from black and white to color. And I think now, since Doordarshan has shown its capability in making 4K transmission, and that transmission has been used throughout the world. So this will change a paradigm. And I think Doordarshan will keep doing well and use more and more 4K technology in future.
Well, absolutely. And one last question. The new baby of Doordarshan, DD India, it was quite a litmus test for it, and it was also the launching pad. So how do you feel now?
DD made a lot of efforts to revamp the DD India as its international channel, and this was the absolutely right time when the G20 event was happening, and as the entire world was watching India and also Doordarshan. And I think DD India has done very well, and it is a launchpad which will make Doordarshan respected not only in India but throughout the world.
Well, absolutely, and why not? This was the test, and we have passed it in flying colors. With cameraman Ajit in Delhi, this is Vishal Barristow for DD India.
The Moroccan government has declared 3 days of national mourning after a massive earthquake rocked the North African country. The death toll has surpassed 2,000 people, while around 1,500 are injured. Alex Kadir reports from the ground.
Hundreds of families in Marrakesh, in western Morocco, are spending sleepless nights outdoors after the devastating quake turned their lives upside down.
My kids were afraid. I could not leave them to go to work, so I stayed with them. I remained by their side, but when it comes to food, The shops closed their doors. Here we are, enduring hunger and thirst.
Friday's earthquake is Morocco's deadliest in at least 6 decades. The epicenter was 72 kilometers southwest of Marrakesh. The major tremor turned many buildings into rubble, including a UNESCO World Heritage Site in the heart of the old city. Rescue workers are racing against time to find the survivors while the death toll is rising. Countries across the world, including India, the US, Germany, and France, have offered assistance. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the disaster from the G20 summit in New Delhi.
औपचारिक कार्रवाई शुरू से पहले हम सभी की ओर से कुछ देर पहले मोरक्को में आए भूकंप से प्रभावित लोगों के प्रति मैं अपनी हार्दिक संवेदना प्रकट करना चाहता हूं। हम प्रार्थना करते हैं कि सभी इंजर्ड लोग शीघ्र स्वस्थ हो। इस कठिन समय में पूरा विश्व समुदाय मोरक्को के साथ है और हम उन्हें हर संभव सहायता पहुंचाने के लिए तैयार हैं।
Thousands of people need help. The quake has left them in a desperate situation, one that will take many years to recover from. Abhishek Bose for DT India.
So that was Abhishek Bose reporting. Here's Alex Kadia giving us more details from Marrakesh.
Yeah, well, there are certainly two different pictures in Marrakesh and an hour south of here. This city here, you can see there is some damage. That mosque had a 3-meter tower on top of it, which collapsed because of the earthquake and collapsed onto the pickup truck behind me as well. Now, that is the kind of limited damage you see around Marrakesh. People are, however, sleeping in the streets. They are worried about their houses and they are worried that any aftershocks might cause damage to their homes, and that is really the main concern for people here in Marrakesh, not so much the damage itself. If you travel an hour south of here, however, that is much more serious indeed. In those remote Atlas Mountains, those very hard to reach villages, they're hard to reach in normal times, even harder now, and clearing the roads, clearing the rubble is the main focus for those authorities, racing to try and clear the rubble and save any survivors from the earthquake now over a day after the tremors started. So that is the main concern. It is difficult to get a clear picture of exactly how that progress is going on. We know that Morocco has started asking for international help from some of its partners, but it's very much a situation here in Marrakesh where some locals have actually come up to us and said, please tell your viewers in India that Marrakesh is still going. There is some damage, but we are still going. The market around me is going, and that's also the reputational concern is one that people here in Marrakesh feel very strongly. So a difficult picture in the mountains, but Marrakesh trying to rebuild, trying to clean up and go back to normal as quickly as possible.
And US President Joe Biden has left for Vietnam from New Delhi after concluding the G20 summit. And before his departure, he and other G20 world leaders had paid homage at Mahatma Gandhi's memorial in India's capital, Delhi. Officials say that during his visit to Vietnam, the talks will be focused on semiconductors and critical minerals. The US has been pushing for the upgrade for months as it sees the Southeast Asian manufacturing dynamo as a key country in its strategy to secure global supply chains from China-related risks. The Japanese Foreign Minister Yoshimasa Hayashi made a surprise visit to Ukraine on Saturday. Hayashi met Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky and Ukraine's top officials. They both agreed to begin discussions on security guarantees and to cooperate on reconstructing Ukraine's economy. Hayashi pledged support from both the public and the private sectors in Japan to reconstruct Ukraine's economy. The Maldives is now headed for a runoff vote after the opposition candidate Mohamed Muzzou fell short of an outright majority in the first round of the presidential elections. Muzzou took a surprise lead in the Saturday polls with 46% of the vote, while the president, Ibrahim Mohamed Soleh, had polled around 40%. The runoff election between the two will be held on the 30th of this month. Senegal's President Macky Sall has nominated Prime Minister Amadou Ba as the ruling coalition's candidate for the February 2024 presidential election. Ba, the former economy minister and foreign minister, is a taxation specialist. He was appointed Prime Minister of the country in September last year after violent unrest in the West African country. Saul declined running for a third term, giving room for others to contest ahead. Hurricane Lee, that weakened on Saturday to Category 3, is expected to move north of Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands this weekend. However, it is expected to strengthen again. The U.S. National Hurricane Center evaluates that it could cause dangerous beach conditions on the U.S. East Coast beginning on Sunday. Lee, located about 350 miles east-northeast of the northern Leeward Islands, was packing winds of 115 miles per hour. An ailing American speleologist is reported to be trapped at a depth of over 3,280 feet in Morocco cave in southern Turkey. More than 150 rescuers from Turkey and other nations have been working to save him since Thursday. Mark Dickey, who is 40 years of age, began suffering from gastrointestinal bleeding and was unable to hike back to the cave's entrance. Now, over the past week, cave rescuers, doctors and paramedics rushed to find and treat Dickey inside the cave. And the Asia Cup encounter between India and Pakistan is underway currently at the R. Premadasa Stadium in Colombo. Pakistan won the toss and elected to bowl first. KL Rahul and Virat Kohli are at the crease batting for India. When reports last came in, India were 140 for the loss of 2 wickets. Anil Thomas is now joining us in the studio with more on this story. Well, Anil, last time the two teams met, it was rained off. What are the chances this time?
Well, sun is playing peekaboo there in Colombo, so not much that you can look forward to, but a great start that India has managed to get. 60 runs in the first 10 overs, the way both openers have got half centuries, I think that settles that Indian dressing room, and that's a big plus going into, the World Cup. And this particular game against Pakistan, once again India getting a chance to bat first against Pakistan, and I think the Indian batsmen need to make it count. The openers have given them that solid start. It's now left to Virat Kohli and KL Rahul, who's playing in the number 4 position, a likely position that he could be playing in the World Cup. Clearly, leaving them with things to consolidate. If India can post a good score here on board, this could surely, go well for Team India looking into the final.
And KL Rahul coming back after a long layoff, is he, match fit?
Well, at least the initial phase, little bit of what we have seen there, KL in the middle, coming in place of Shreyas Iyer. That's a cause of concern. Shreyas Iyer has got back spasm. That's what the management has said. Let's hope it's not serious, because Shreyas is your number 4 batsman in the World Cup. So if you're looking to alter, KL Rahul will shift in between 5, playing somewhere between the top order or coming down at number 5. So KL Rahul needs to, look at this. This is his first outing there in Asia Cup. He needs to make it count. He needs to come good with a good innings there. Spend more time in the middle. I wouldn't say you need to get a 50 or 100 there, but spend more time there in the middle. Play more overs, rotate the strike, because Virat Kohli at the other end is going to help him, regain that confidence that he's looking to build. And I think that goes well for KL Rahul, having a batsman like Virat Kohli who doesn't, restrict himself when it comes to playing his shots. And that's something good that could work well for KL Rahul. Looking at this particular outing, because he has very less of opportunity in terms of international matches now to look forward to ahead of the World Cup. So the more time that you spend in the middle on the wicket, it's always going to do a world of good for him going into the World Cup.
And what is India's bowling looking like? Because at the end of the day, you have to win a match by bowling out the other team or restricting them to less than your score.
Well, I think Asia Cup is all about, it's considered to be El Clasico of between India and Pakistan. And if you look at the tournament in particular, you can put it up as the Confederation Cup or the Copa America of Asia. So purely in terms of contest, India-Pakistan matches generally don't matter. Whatever score that the opposition puts up, the other team tries to outdo it. Indian bowlers, there's one change that has come in the Indian bowling attack. Bumrah is back. So Bumrah coming back means Indian batsmen, need to put something safe on the board. Last inning score, last time that India managed to get 266 on board. If India can manage anywhere above that, 266 above, I think we've got a good match on our cards.
We'll leave it there. Thanks very much, Arnold Thomas, for joining us. Now, the world number 2, Novak Djokovic, will take on world number 3, Daniil Medvedev, in the US Open 2023 tennis final at the Arthur Ashe Stadium in New York on Monday. The 36-year-old Djokovic is looking to equal Margaret Court's record of 24 Grand Slam tennis titles, the most by any player in history. Novak Djokovic has won 2 Grand Slam titles this year, the Australian Open and the French Open. He also made the finals of Wimbledon, where the Serbian lost to Carlos Alcaraz. In the semi-final, Djokovic defeated the local favourite Ben Shelton 6-3, 6-2, 7-6 to reach his 10th final at the Flushing Meadows. And in the other semi-final, the Russian third seed and US Open 2021 winner Daniil Medvedev beat the top seed and reigning champion Carlos Alcaraz. The US Open 2023 win will be the 15th meeting between these two tennis stars, and it will be a rematch of the 2021 US Open final, where Medvedev denied Djokovic a calendar year Grand Slam by beating the Serb in straight sets. The US teenager Coco Gauff mounted a fierce comeback to beat the Belarusian second seed Arina Sabalenka 2-6, 6-3, 6-2 in the US Open women's final and claim her first Grand Slam title in front of adoring home fans. With the win, the sixth seed, Gauff became the first American to win a US Open singles title since Sloane Stevens in 2017. The 17-year-old Gauff fed off noisy local support as she mounted a terrific second-set fight comeback and kept the momentum going until the end of the battle before falling to the court on the Arthur Ashe Stadium as she clinched the title with a backhand winner. And as we continue to tell you about the bilateral meetings that are taking place on the sidelines of the G20 summit in New Delhi, the Indian Prime Minister and the Turkey President Recep Tayyip Erdogan also met on the sidelines of the summit. The two leaders talked about ways to further cement trade and infrastructure linkages between the two countries. India-Turkey economic and commercial cooperation, it constitutes an important dimension of the bilateral relationship. India's economic engagement also with Turkey has acquired new momentum in recent years with considerable increase in India-Turkey trade, which exceeded the US dollars 10 billion mark in 2021-22. Operation Dost was launched on the 6th of February 2023 to provide urgent relief to Turkey in the wake of the devastating earthquake in the country's southern provinces. Over 250 trained Indian personnel, along with specialized equipment, vehicles, relief material, arrived in Turkey in 6 C-17 Indian Air Force aircraft and actively worked in search and rescue operations, and they provided medical treatment through the self-contained field hospital that was equipped to perform even life and limb-saving surgeries. India's humanitarian assistance exercises, which include this Operation Dost, these have been among the earliest helpers to arrive in Turkey. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi also met the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz on the sidelines of the G20 summit. India and Germany have been strategic partners since the year 2000. And the last few decades, in fact, have seen these relations become stronger because they have grown as economic partners.
There has been an upswing in economic relations between India and Germany in recent years. Germany is India's 9th largest foreign direct investor and one of its leading economic partners in Europe. German companies have made significant investments in India in the automobile sector. Chancellor Olaf Scholz was accompanied by a high-level business delegation when he visited India earlier this year. Along with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he addressed top industry leaders from both nations. New Delhi and Berlin have pledged to enhance partnership in innovation and technology. The two sides reiterated their commitment to sustainable development when Modi attended the G7 summit in Germany in 2022. Collaboration in development projects includes green energy corridors in Indian states like Gujarat and Rajasthan. The countries are also cooperating on agriculture, artificial intelligence, and urban mobility.
Well, Germany is the world's fourth largest economy and Europe's largest. It comes to this year's G20 summit in New Delhi under the leadership of Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who has said that he wants to see, in fact, he wants to use this gathering to strengthen partnerships with Asia, Africa, and Latin America. From Berlin, here's DD India's correspondent Trent Murray's take on Germany's G20 priorities.
Well, Germany comes to this G20 summit at a time when Europe is facing a number of difficult issues on several fronts, most notably the war in Ukraine. It is a war that is deeply personal for Germany in many ways. Firstly, it's occurring not that far away geographically from the country's borders. There's also 1 million Ukrainian refugees living here, seeking shelter essentially from the conflict. And for that reason, we are being told that Chancellor Scholz will continue to try and rally support on the international stage for Ukraine, not just with some of those countries that are already supporting the country militarily, but we are told he wants to have conversations with the likes of Indonesia, Brazil, and South Africa, effectively parts of the global south, in order to try and champion Ukraine's cause. Speaking of Africa, we also know that Germany goes into this summit supporting the African Union, becoming a permanent member of the G20, just like the EU is. Again, we expect Chancellor Scholz to be very much supporting that proposal when it's brought before other leaders. Promoting trade and commerce is another area we're being told that the Germans are looking at heavily. Of course, Germany is Europe's largest economy. It has a number of really important high-profile industries like the auto industry, for example. And there's a real push underway, not just here, but in other parts of Europe, for some of those big companies to start diversifying away from doing so much business with China and instead to de-risk by opening up to new markets and expanding. And it has to be said, India really is the top of the wish list in that cause. On the flip side, though, whilst economic growth is, of course, very important, we are also hearing from green and environmental groups very, very concerned about the rise in emissions. And so we are being told that Chancellor Scholz will have discussions at this summit around investing in renewable energy and also to try and push for other countries to move away from fossil fuels at a faster pace. It also just has to be said, and it's a bit of an unusual prospect that we may see, but the Chancellor will likely attend this summit with a very big eye patch on. It's certainly going to grab attention, and especially in those group photos with other world leaders. That is because he suffered an accident while he was out exercising last weekend. It's not a serious injury. He is taking many jokes about it. There's been plenty of pirate photos and the like made up in the German newspapers here. He stresses the injury is not serious. He's just waiting for that bruising to go down before he takes the eye patch off. In Berlin, Trent Murray for DD India.
Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also met the South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol, and both sides discussed ways of strengthening ties and also cooperation in several fields. And that's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour. Let's get your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, on X, on Instagram. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. My name is Mark Lynn from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks very much for watching DD India News Hour.